parent who's estranged from one or more of your children? And if so, how does it make you feel? What kind of pain is that to go through? I'm going to discuss in this video in more detail what it's like to be an estranged parent, but also the things that I do to help cope, and maybe that will help you too. So this is a tough one today. I thought last week's was tough because I was talking about not having family. And this time, as you saw from that introduction, I'm going to talk more about what it's like to be estranged from your child or children. I talked a little bit about this in an earlier video, but I have since deleted that one, and I wanted to really go into it in a little more depth, but also explain more about how you can cope with it, which I don't think I did in a previous video. So, as I mentioned last time when I talked about not having family, part of that is that I'm estranged from my adult son, and I only have one child, so I have basically not spoken to him in about a little over 12 years, probably by now. It is definitely one of the most difficult things, if not the most difficult thing that I've ever had to go through in my life. And I'm sure if any of you are estranged from children or any other family members, you know what I mean by that, and you understand how incredibly difficult it is. I wanted to make a disclaimer that for purposes of protecting my son's privacy, I am not showing any photos of him, even as a child. I also am not mentioning his name or where he lives or anything like that. I doubt if he would see this video. He doesn't know I have this particular channel, so unless it was just by accident or whatever, he wouldn't probably see it. But I still feel like I don't want to show photos of him because I don't think that really helps anything at this point. I will tell you that my son is now 44 years of age. He turned 44 this year. And like I said, he's my only child. So never expected when he was growing up, never expected there would ever be a time that would come that we wouldn't be speaking. So this was, I didn't really get the first inkling that something like that could happen until he stopped speaking to my mother when he was in his early 20s. And I think I mentioned it in the video on not having family that he didn't really speak to her the last 10 years of her life. So when that happened, I had this strange feeling that he would do that or could do that to me or to anyone else in the family. And sure enough, he did that to me. So when he was in his early 30s. I can tell you some things about this, and of course there's some things I'm not going to tell you about it, but the one thing I'm not going to do is make any excuses for myself. I blame myself for a lot of the reasons behind why my son doesn't speak to me. Now, some of it is also on him. It's both of us, but since I don't fully know his reasons because he hasn't told me that, I can't I can't just imagine completely the reasons why he stopped speaking to me. I can tell you what I did wrong as a mom and the things I regret because that's my experience and that's my life. So I can share that. I don't know why he deals with things the way he does. As much as we love our children, I don't think fully understand them because they're their own unique human being. Anyway, I don't pretend to know why my son doesn't speak to me. I can guess at some things, but I don't really fully know, and I may never know. And that's part of the challenge of dealing with this. So what I can tell you is that when he was born, I was 24 years old. I don't think I was ready to be a mom. And I also started having a lot of physical problems when he was right after he was born. One of them I later found out. I didn't find this out for 6-7 years. Is that I had damaged my inner ear when I was giving birth, And therefore, it caused me to have problems with vertigo and dizziness off and on. And especially early on in the first maybe 10, 15 years after that happened. It's since gotten better because my brain has adjusted. The damage is not corrected. It can't be corrected in my inner ear, but it basically, my brain has learned to compensate for that. But that created a lot of problems because sometimes I would get really bad vertigo episodes and I couldn't do much. I couldn't even get out of bed for a good day or two at a time. And I also had some problems with undiagnosed anemia at the time. They didn't know what it was. It didn't show up as traditional anemia, but I had some issues with that. So I had some illness, and I was only in my 20s. I was young. I shouldn't have had problems like this, but I did. And unfortunately, I think that contributed to my attitude towards my son when he was a baby, when he was a toddler. I took care of him. I didn't outwardly abuse him or anything like that. And I wasn't, I didn't have a problem with addictions or anything at that point in my life. So I look back on it now and I think that I believe that babies sense the emotions of their parents. I believe that they take their cues from unspoken things. I think they just sense things. And so I think I felt resentment. I think I felt resentment because I wasn't well and I had a child to take care of. And I wasn't really happy being married to the person I was. Not that he was a bad person or not that it was abusive or anything like that. I just didn't love him and I didn't really want to be in this situation. But I was also dealing with some physical problems, and I know that that made me feel resentful. And that's the kiss of death. That is absolutely the kiss of death. I mean, I see that now. At the time, I couldn't see the forest for the trees, as the saying goes. But it is the kiss of death because I believe children sense that. And I think that marked the whole problem with my son. I really do. I think that kind of set us off on the wrong track very early on. And I regret that so much. If we could only go back in time, if we could only correct the problem, but obviously we can't. Hindsight's 2020, but we can't go back and we can't change it. I wish I could change it. And so, that was kind of, I won't go into everything that happened after that. I think that was a big problem. And it's hard for me to admit that on here. It is, but it's the truth. And I believe in telling the truth. So it is the truth. It's nothing. It certainly wasn't his fault. It was all on me. Now, we had some issues, I think, with our inherent personalities too as he was growing up. My son and I were very, very different personalities, very, very different kinds of people. And I think we both graded on each other the wrong way. When he was young, as much as I had that underlying, resentment thing going on, I was very loving towards him outwardly. And I liked, I was affectionate. And a lot of times he would push me away or, and then I'd get hurt by that. And we kind of were at cross purposes. I mean, it was not a good dynamic. Of course, then his dad and I got divorced when he was about 7.5. I know that really hurt him because at that point, that was the end of me living with him full time. At that point, he split time between his dad's and me. And we had joint legal custody, but he really had my ex-husband had more residential custody. And I think that created a problem. And then the next big thing that I really fault myself for is when he was around 12 years old. We were living up in Washington State at that time. And I mean, he was born there. And I chose to move to Arizona, to Flagstaff, Arizona, with my boyfriend at the time. And I thought he was old enough that it wouldn't be a big trauma for him. He had already been living most of the time with his dad anyway, and I was willing for him to do that as long as he could come down and visit me, which he did. I moved down there, and came to visit me 2, 3 times a year, and we talked every week on the phone, and we exchanged letters. This was in the 1990s, and people still wrote letters, amazingly. And so I thought it was okay. But in retrospect, I realized it wasn't okay. He really felt like I abandoned him, I believe. And I think that was kind of the other big, hammer that fell on this whole situation. And I regret that. I regret that I didn't realize that that's how he might feel. He never once said to me, "Oh, I feel abandoned because you went to Arizona." But I realize now that that's probably what he did feel. And he would come down and visit, and sometimes it was, we had a lot of arguments or whatever, and sometimes it went well, and you know how parents are with teenagers. So I kind of thought that was normal. He did talk to me, he did confide in me. We did have some closeness there. But when he turned 18, everything changed. He came down to visit me after he had turned 18, and I was still in Arizona. And he drove himself all the way down by himself. He had a car, and we just fought. It was just, for some reason, everything like ticked him off, and everything ticked me off, and it just didn't go well. And that was the first time I really remember thinking, I don't know how to make things okay. I don't know how to get along with my own son. And that was hard. It was really hard. And I will say that he wasn't a kid that was he didn't do drugs, or he didn't drink a lot, or he didn't, have real problems. He didn't have, he wasn't out doing crimes or anything like that. He really, he went out and got a job in high school. He was supporting himself once he got out of high school. He was very responsible in that respect, and I really, I really was glad of that. I was very proud of him, and I just didn't understand why we didn't get along. And it was made worse when he came to visit me when he was about 23, and I was still in Arizona, and he came down to visit, and it did not go well. It just didn't. Again, it's like everything I seemed to do seemed to irritate him. So again, I kind of saw the writing on the wall at that point, because he had already stopped speaking to my mother. And I had this fear that this would happen. Now, it didn't end up happening till he was in his early 30s. And it didn't end up being some big fight we had or anything that caused the end of it. I'm not going to give the particulars of what was going on in his life again, because again, that's kind of a privacy thing. But he was going through something in his life, and I just wanted to talk to him about it. And I guess, I don't know, maybe he either didn't want to talk to me about it, or he was embarrassed in some way. I don't know. But I know that marked the end. Like it just was like he just stopped. He wouldn't return my call, and then I kept trying to call and get him to call me back, and then he still wouldn't. And it didn't occur to me immediately that this was like the end. It took a few months before I realized he's really not going to talk to me. So it wasn't some big blow up or big fight or anything major. And he's never told me, because I haven't spoken to him since then. I made an attempt to go see him in 2017. He was living up in Seattle at that time. He's no longer there, so I feel like it's okay to say he was there then. But he was in Seattle, and I had driven up for some other thing that I was doing up there, and I really wanted to see him. And I went by where he was working, and he wasn't there that day, but somebody there called. I didn't ask them to, but they called, and then I don't know, it seemed like everything got twisted, and he and his wife thought that I was there to make trouble or something, which I wasn't. I just wanted to see him. It was that simple. So anyway, that blew up in my face. I never did see him. And then the other aspect I'll add to this is that, and I didn't say this in the video on family, but what has hurt so much is not only not seeing him or talking to him in 12 years, but the fact that I have 2 grandchildren who I only saw when they were kids, really young kids, and I've basically been denied being any part of their lives for no reason. I mean, There was nothing I did that would have, made me not able to see my grandkids. So that hurts tremendously. I mean, I basically have two grandkids I don't know. I have two grandkids I don't know. And that is unbelievably upsetting. I mean, I don't have words. I don't have words for this. What I do know is I love my son very much. I will always love him. And I would always be open. The door is always open on my end. I'm always open to speaking to him and reconciling and forgiving him. I've had to forgive myself for what I have described to you that I know I did wrong as a parent. So that is how my heart is about it, in the sense that I don't, when it's your child, any of you that are watching this that are parents, you know that when it's your child, you do love them unconditionally. You do. And I'm happy to see, from what I do know of what he's doing in his life, things are going well for him. My one of my grandkids is already an adult, and the other one is almost at the end of high school. And I know that my son's doing well, his family's doing well, and I'm really happy for that. I'm really glad for that. It would hurt me even more to know that he was really struggling and I couldn't be there for him because he, had shut me out. So that is one thing I'm really grateful for, because I only want the best for him. So let's talk now about, how do you cope? How do I cope? And maybe in talking about this, it'll help some of you who have difficulties coping with the estrangement from your child. So one thing I do is I cry when I need to. I absolutely cry when I need to, and it bubbles up at strange times. And I have moments, the two toughest days of the year are Mother's Day and his birthday. The rest of the year, it's not necessarily a particular day or anything, it just comes up. But his birthday and Mother's Day are really tough, because that kind of forces me to think about him and about what it means, and all of that. So I cry when I need to. I also journal as needed about the feelings. I have been in therapy also at various times when I really felt like I needed extra support. I don't really talk too much to my friends about it, because they know the situation. And unless I'm going through a particularly bad time, I don't generally discuss it with them, because I don't see the point in talking all the time about something that probably isn't going to change. The thing is, I also hold out hope. As much as it's a tiny sliver at times, I hold out hope that someday we will be speaking again, and someday I might be able to see him. But I also don't expect it. I think the danger comes when you really expect something is going to happen and that everything is going to be okay again. And I have no evidence of that. I can say one thing about my son's character, is that he is a very stubborn person. He was a very stubborn toddler, and he continued to be a very stubborn person. Reminds me a little bit of my mom, actually, in his stubbornness. But and because of that, I don't expect he'll relent. I don't really believe he will come around. I've had people say, "Oh, he'll come around. He'll get older and he'll regret this and he'll want to talk to his mother." And I go, I don't think so. I do know that I've never met anybody more stubborn. So, you know, however that translates, that is a tough thing. That is a really tough thing. But I know that I still have hope. I always believe in having hope. So, and I take care of myself, as I've talked in most of my videos about, you have to take responsibility and take care of yourself. No matter what else is going on in your family or with your estranged children, you're responsible for you. I am responsible for me. And so I take that very seriously at this point in my life, especially as I'm getting older. I really take that seriously. And so I take care of myself. I try to do the right things for my health and well-being. If you've watched my channel, many of my videos, you know I meditate daily. That is very important to my mental health and to my stress level. So I do that on a daily basis. Once in a while I miss a day, but for the most part I do that every day. And then the things that I would say that I really also recommend to people is to have a sense of continuing to live your life. Continue to live your life and continue to have hopes and dreams and things you still want to do. You know, if you're older, you might call them a bucket list or something like that, but having things you still want to do in your life, having a sense of purpose is also very important. It's one of the reasons I have this YouTube channel. This is my sense of purpose, is like if I can help anyone as they're going through a challenging time with either my experience or wisdom about it or whatever, then I feel like I've done something. I may never know about it. I may never know I've actually helped someone, but just the thought that it's possible. I know when I was a teacher, when I was teaching at community college, that's one of the things I really, really loved about the job was that I was making a difference sometimes. I had a sense of purpose that I was helping students every semester in some way. Now, probably didn't help all of them, but if I helped just a handful, that was great. That was a win in my book. So it's that same sense that keeps me going now. You know, until I draw my last breath, I think it is so important to have a sense of purpose in life, something you know that you can do, and hopefully to help other people in some way. So that is huge for me, and that is one thing that really keeps me going. And if I could infuse that into every single person that is dealing with the challenge like this, that would be amazing. I would love that if every person could have that same sense of purpose. I know I've gotten some comments from time to time on some of my videos where I really sense that people are despairing. You know, they're struggling. They don't maybe have much family, or they're estranged or whatever, and they just sound like they can't cope. And I really wish I could get this through, like, this little lens, and get through to the camera and say, please don't ever lose hope. You've always got yourself. And as long as you're able to do anything with your mind and or your body, do something with a sense of purpose. Do something to help other people in some way. And I think that that alleviates some of this pain. And I know it has for me. I don't know if it works for everybody, but I'm putting it out there as a suggestion. The ultimate thing, as I keep saying in all my videos, is keep moving forward in life. Put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. Because life is all about that. It's all about change and renewal. And it doesn't matter what your age is. Just keep going. And that's my best suggestions to you for how I've coped and maybe how you can cope with something like this. I know one thing: nothing is to be gained by blaming. Nothing is to be gained by, saying, oh, it's all their fault and it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. As I've told you in this video today, I laid out here in this video what I knew I did wrong as a mom. It is very important to be honest with yourself. Not to beat yourself up. I've gone past that point. I don't beat myself up about it. I did for a while, but you have to get past that. But you also have to be honest with yourself. If you blew it, you blew it. And, and then move on from that. Be able to move on from that. Because the point is, there's no point in getting stuck in that blame game with yourself either. Absolutely not. So I hope this has been of some help today. I wanted, like I said, to go into a little more about the situation and how it affected me, and also how I deal with it. And I hope that some of you can find some sense of comfort from this, or maybe you will listen to this and realize I do understand what that's like to, have the loss or estrangement from a child, and I certainly do. As I've said before, most painful thing in my life, but I'm still here. And I still get through each day, and I still cope with life. And every day I think about how much I love my son, because I do. And that's just a fact. He may never hear me say it again in his life, but I do love him, and that's always in my heart. So don't don't ever lose that for yourselves either. So until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward. Take care. Bye.